Well, I think we'll start. So Eckhart and I had a wonderful pre-talk conversation. One of the things we were talking about was, one of the things I was saying I was interested in is what happens in people's lives that lead to changes or transformations. And I was going to ask Eckhart to maybe tell us about what it was in your own life, or a little background about your life that resulted in ultimately, if you will, a transformation or a great insight.
Well, unhappiness, basically, intense unhappiness, sometimes called depression, anxiety, periods of anxiety, depressions, throughout my 20s, and even in childhood I was already predominantly unhappy. I remember when we lived in a 3 or 4 story building, and when they were painting the outside of the building, they built a scaffolding. I was about 6, and I thought, we lived on the ground floor. So, well, as long as there's a scaffolding, I have no problem. Whenever I want to commit suicide, I can just climb up and jump down. So I'll be okay as long as the scaffolding is there. That's my way out. That shows the degree of unhappiness. And then at 29, it became more and more acute. And one night the thought came into my head. I describe it very briefly at the beginning of The Power of Now, in the middle of the night. I can't live with myself any longer. There was such intense unhappiness, and the depression, it was just too much to take. At that moment, an inner separation happened. I couldn't have explained exactly at that time, but retrospectively I can explain now what happened because I understand it. I didn't then. An inner separation happened between the unhappy self and a deeper sense of I or beingness, which I now call consciousness itself. So I had been identified throughout my life with an unhappy mind-made entity consisting of self-images and ideas and self-talk in the mind. It's the self-talk that most people are familiar with, but in my case it was particularly destructive and unpleasant. But everybody is familiar with the self-talk in the head. I sometimes call it the voice in the head, which are quite simply the automatic compulsive, one could say, thought processes that never stop, that either comment on your sense perception, whatever is happening around you, a running commentary. You might recognize that, it might be familiar to you. If you don't recognize it, then you're so identified with it that you don't even know that you have a running commentary on your life. You have become the running commentary in your life. In other words, that, as happened to me, become totally identified with the compulsive thinking that never stopped. That voice in the head that, in my case, was predominantly negative. And so the emotions that then I felt continuously were the reflection of the predominantly negative self-talk about myself, about other people, about the situation I found myself in. There was ample justification for negative self-talk because I was struggling, I didn't have enough money, I was trying to prove myself, working too hard, had problems with, couldn't find a girlfriend, was too shy, all kinds of twisted up inside. And so basically there was this unhappy me, but at that night I disidentified from it and stood back from it, so to speak, and I suddenly thought, this thought that came to my head, I can't live with myself any longer. There was a stepping back from the thought, and I thought, are there 2 of me or 1? What does that mean? I can't live with myself. Who am I, and who or what is that self that I cannot live with? then that thought brought about the separation. And then there was an I, and then this unhappy me was somehow recognized as not real. But at that time I couldn't have explained it. It was this very strange experience. All I can say is the next morning I woke up feeling totally at peace. And just opening my eyes, looking around the room, and everything seemed fresh and new. The light coming through the curtains, the simplest objects lying in the table had a certain presence, a benign, wonderful presence to them. Everything I acknowledged, and it was lovely. And there was this underlying peace. And I said, what is this? And then I was living in London at the time. I got on a bus, even going through central London on a bus. Everything seemed so all the people running around the city, everything was so peaceful. I said, this is so strange. And then I bought a notebook and I started a diary, and I started with this first entry was, I don't know what happened to me, but it's something weird. I just have to write this down in case I lose it again. But somehow it stayed with me. It didn't, the intensity had variations in it of the piece, but basically there was always, since then, always some piece in the background of my life. So that was a shift in consciousness. And much later, when I started to investigate other spiritual traditions, Buddhism and mystical Christianity, Gnosticism, Sufism, Zen Buddhism, also the great Hindu teachers, gradually I began to understand that what happened to me, they call awakening or spiritual awakening. And so the understanding wasn't there. There was just the experience of it at first.
I'd had what a lot of people would call spiritual or mystical experiences from the time I can remember. Mm-hmm. Although I didn't think of them that way. I think children don't think of them as spiritual or mystical or unusual. They were just sort of things that would occasionally happen. Mm-hmm. And so I think when I meditated, it was almost like a time of remembering.
That you had had those experiences?
That I'd had them.
Uh-huh.
And I had had them actually all the way, in some sense or another, almost all the way up to that time that I started to just meditate. I had actually been having certain experiences periodically. Mm-hmm. I used to call them, as I got older into junior high school and high school, I used to call them one of those days. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those days where I would wake up and everything would just be different. I would walk around kind of really not knowing who I am, or almost like the identity had dropped away. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like, almost like emptiness looking through my own eyeballs and feeling this incredible intimacy or oneness with everything around me. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think of it as spiritual or mystical or anything like that. I literally just would say to myself, oh, here's one of those days. And all I would do on those days is just, I started to realize I had to be a little bit careful of how I looked at people, because the tendency was to stare at them very sort of profoundly and very deeply, almost like I could see the mystery that I was experiencing reflected in them. And so there was this tendency to sort of just stare at them and like, what's really going on? Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting. And that was kind of, I think, that kind of got stimulated in a whole new way when I started to meditate.
And then there was this day where you were sitting, trying to calm your mind down. And what happened?
Well, the first time when I was 25, it was my first opening.
Yes.
And strangely enough, for the 5 or 6 years before that, I had had this intuition, very clear intuition, that I was going to die at 25 years old. And I thought it was going to be physical death. What else could you assume?
Yes.
The strange thing is, again, in retrospect, it never concerned me whatsoever. It was like a piece of information that was given to me, and my mind made nothing out of it. It was just like a fact. And I didn't have any relationship other than it was a fact, And somehow I knew it was going to be true. So fast forward, 25 years old, and I sit down to meditate, and I was really, really intentionally trying to have this breakthrough for a long time. I would walk the sidewalk, the streets going to work, and I would literally have this mantra in my head, like, what is this? What is this? What is this? Because I felt like I had something inside of me, this intensity, this thing that wanted to be known. And it was almost like I got invaded by it, is how it felt. Like something came inside.
You were possessed.
That's what it felt like. And I would just literally, in my mind, what is this? What is this? What is this? All day long. And I used to think, I wonder what day I'll actually have some sort of psychotic break or psychological breakdown, because I knew that I couldn't sustain that intensity indefinitely. So I used to think about that. So anyway, one day I have this real intensity, and I sit down to meditate, and I just have this feeling of this is it. I'm really going to somehow do it. And I sat down, it was like all my will just focused. Within a couple of minutes, I focused like I'd never focused. And right at that moment, I had an insight, which was, I can't do this.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great insight. It was like complete defeat. Just utter, devastating defeat. Like, not only can I not do this, this will never happen. I'm defeated. And as soon as I had that sense, I'm defeated, I cannot do this. This immense sort of opening.
So when you
happened.
said, I cannot do that anymore, meaning the meditation,
the whole thing.
the whole thing,
The spiritual search, the enlightenment, the whole project. I just met like this wall that I've been pushing and pushing and pushing on.
Yeah.
And I was defeated by it. Intellectually, emotionally, physically even, energetically, I was just completely defeated.
So.
And as soon as I was defeated, in the next instant, it started out as an energetic thing. I guess they would call it nowadays a Kundalini experience. Do you know? And I felt this immense rush of energy and started breathing quite heavily, and my heart started to
Were you on your own?
I'm just sitting there meditating in my little meditation hut in my parents' backyard.
Yeah.
And having been an athlete, I knew what my maximum heart rate felt like. I knew what a heart rate of around 200 felt like. And my heart was beating way faster than that. And there was so much energy, the heart was beating, it felt like my heart was going to explode. I was breathing hard, and yet I'm sitting there meditating, you know. I can't move. And I just had a thought. This is going to kill me. And the next thought I had, when I knew it was going to kill me, the next thought I had was, if that's what it takes, let's get it over with. And it wasn't like a courageous thought. It wasn't, you know, like a masculine, fearless, okay, I'll do it. It was just a very simple, okay, I'll die. I'll die right here, right now. I'll let my heart explode. I won't move off this cushion. I won't go anywhere. And I really thought I was going to die, 100%. As soon as I thought, okay, I'll die now, all of a sudden I was instantly in a different, I don't even know what to call it, different dimension. I wasn't aware of my body anymore. Absolute darkness, total infinity of black. And I wasn't even there anymore. It was just this infinite, open, sort of black space. And after a while, what I could feel is there was like these insights coming, almost being downloaded through the top of my head into my body. Yeah. Like a computer program was being downloaded.
And what was the insights? Could you differentiate the information?
I couldn't. They were coming like 100 a second. Just way too many for me to have any conscious, but I knew they were insights. Just like, if you can imagine ahas going off like a popcorn popper. Mm-hmm. But so quickly you couldn't stop to really recognize what you just realized. And so there was this downloading of almost like information and ahas. And then then slowly, after some time, I don't know how long, I became more aware of my body. And the energy had settled. Everything settled, and after a while, I was just sitting there. Totally normal. Absolutely no high, no low, no, it just all just, and I'm just sitting there. And I think, well, there's nothing left to do. I guess I'll get up. And I got up, and
You didn't have any afterthoughts?
Not at that moment.
What this blackness was?
Not at that instant. It was just so, looking back, it's,
Yeah.
It's almost strange. I didn't have these, I just thought, well, I guess I get up, and I got up and I turned and I did my bows, and I bowed to my Buddha statue figure that I was always there with the incense lit, and I bowed down, and by the time I got my head back up, I was just laughing hysterically. And I just looked at that Buddha and I thought, I've been chasing you for years. And I could see that which I had been chasing was this that was chasing it. I didn't have any more definition than that. That was of what that was, what I was, what I'd been chasing, but I knew that what I had been chasing was what I am. And that's where the laughter came from. Just laughed and laughed and laughed.
When I sat in front of Papaji, and the words from him really came through, because my mind didn't want to hear what he was saying. He was speaking and something inside was going, I was looking and he was, I could, because something was caught, and all my resistance, which I was not expecting, I thought I was well past that. Resistance. And outwardly I looked quite cool and everything. But inside was a riot. I was not enjoying it at all. Because mind doesn't want to hear. It's like the mind is... It wasn't funny, I'm laughing now. But something seeped through, and he say, if you wish to find the truth, you must vanish. If you want to find the truth, you must disappear. And I don't know what that did. But in my mind I said, okay, that's it. I've got what I needed to come here for. This is a big trip. All these people are wasting their time. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That was my... And so I decided on that day, that's it. I've spent long enough in this place. Luck now became bad luck now. I was not interested. I'm out of here. I start to pack my bags to go. But the serum was in. It was already in. And in 1 second, something, everything I thought that my mind, the world my mind had made up, vanished in an instant. And the one I thought I was not there. Who is up for that? See? Yes. So that was the offending article, the offending factor, you see. The one who is searching is in its own way. Master's grace slapped him out. that moment. There was not, before that, there was no feeling of gratitude and so on, so on, so easy. It was like, you know, he made me feel ashamed. He exposed me in front of all these people and all of this. Me. But the serum was in, and it was only a question of time. Yes. The delusion couldn't stay. It was deeply unhappy. There was no compass for it to grow anymore. And in an instant, it is gone. So this one who is talking and suffering, and I don't know how much longer I can go, does not exist. It never existed. It's only apparent. A dream. You are here. You are. For sure. Beyond this dream, because it was discovered when I said I could not find myself. I could not find the context that lived in me as who I am. The reference for the person could not be found. Even though I was looking at my hand like this. But it was seen that there's nobody in them. I don't know if you understand what that means. You see, there was no feeling of who it is. And yet, I am here, but not in the old sense. You without you. Just an immensity. An immensity. All the senses were working. I could see the traffic moving on the road. But there was a silence about everything. I was inside a vast universe. But I was all of it. But seeing all of it from a kind of here-ness. Mm-hmm. And the one who will be complaining and saying this, something and that, well, not to mention. That was not in my consciousness at that moment. Only I saw Papaji everywhere. Whereas before, something was keeping a little bit a hand on the chest, like, not so close.
Let's take an example. Well, actually, I'll give you a real life example. In fact, it was almost the very first time this happened for me. I was sitting in with Francis in his home in Northern California then, and we were having a conversation about non-duality, and I don't remember exactly what it was. And I remember at the time hearing a dog barking, and it was a distant sound of a dog, and immediately a thought came up. That's the sound of a dog barking, and the dog is in the distance on the other side of the valley. So somehow this was relevant to the context of the conversation, and I said to him, but it's so obvious to me that that dog is on the other side of the valley. It's so obvious that the sound is it's at a distance from myself, and it's made out of something other than myself. It's a dog barking, it's not me. And I remember at the time, I must have been sitting on the floor, he said, place your hands on the carpet. Mm-hmm. So I just went like this, and actually I shut my eyes, mm-hmm. I remember, and he said, place your hands on the carpet, and I placed my hands on the carpet, and then he just said, where does that sensation take place? And it was just so obvious at that moment that the sensation took place inside me. That the sensation was not at a distance from me. It wasn't made out of something other than myself. All that was present was the experience of sensing. Mm-hmm. And sensing takes place in me, not in me, a body and a mind, but in this open, empty, aware presence. And if I look inside that experience of sensing and find out what is there, what is it made of, awareness is the only substance present there for it to be made of. It just became so clear experientially. It was experiential before it was rationalized. Mm-hmm. It was just so obvious that this sensation was taking place inside me, so to speak, and not only inside me, but made out of myself. So and that was the end of it. That was the end of the conversation. But it was like a key. Suddenly, I reasoned with myself, if this is true of what I thought was this carpet, this dead, inert material called the carpet, it must be true of everything. So then I would, wherever I went, I'd go out on the streets and I'd be looking at cars and people and houses, and I realized all I know of these so-called cars and people and houses is the experience of seeing and hearing. Where does seeing take place? Does it take place 10 meters away from myself, or 2 meters, or 20 meters? When I look at the moon, all I know of the moon is the experience of seeing. Does it take place at 1,000,000 miles from myself, or is it intimate, close, made only out of myself? It just became so obvious that wherever I looked, wherever I turned, all I knew was the experience of experiencing. That was all I ever know, is experiencing, and all experiencing is pervaded by the knowing of it. And I am that knowingness, that awareness. It pervades all experience intimately. So it just became clear to me at a very experiential level, long before I was able to rationalize it in the way I'm doing now, that all that is ever known is experience. And I, the knowing element in all experience, pervade all experience intimately. In fact, even that is not true, because I'm suggesting that there are two things, one called experience and another called myself, and that they somehow pervade each other. It's not even that. All there is, all we know, is the knowing of our experience, and that is what I am. That is what I-awareness is, this pure knowingness, which is the substance of all experience.
One afternoon, I just went and sat on a small hill, which was in a town where I grew up. Till that moment, I always thought, this is me and that's somebody else. I had no issue with that somebody else, but that is somebody, this is me. For the first time, I did not know which is me and which is not me. What was me was just spread all over the place. I thought this madness lasted for 5–10 minutes, but when I came back to my normal ways of being, 4.5 hours had passed. I'm sitting right there, fully conscious, eyes open. I sat there around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 7:30 in the evening, sun has set, and I thought it's only 10 minutes, but 4.5 hours had passed. For the first time in my adult life, tears were flowing to a point where my shirt is completely wet. Me and tears were impossible, I'm like this. I've always been happy, that's never been an issue for me. I was successful with what I was doing, I was young and no problems. I was fine. But I'm bursting with another kind of ecstasy which is indescribable. Every cell in my body is just bursting with ecstasy. I had no words. When I shook my head and tried to ask my skeptical mind, okay, what's happening to me? The only thing that my mind could tell me was, maybe you're going off your rocker. I didn't care what it was, but I didn't want to lose it, because this is the most beautiful thing that I had ever touched, and I had never imagined that a human being could ever feel like this within himself. So when I went to my closest friends and said, see, something is happening to me like this, as I'm talking, tears would flow, and people would say, did you drink something? Did you pop something? What did you do? I knew there was no point talking to anybody, because if I just look at the sky, tears will come, if I look at a tree, tears will come, if I close my eyes, tears will come. I'm just bursting. In 6 weeks' time, everything about me changed so dramatically. And I just lost the sense of time. The next time this happened was very significant because there were people around me. I went and sat with my family at the dinner table. I actually thought it's 2 minutes, but 7 hours had gone by. I'm sitting right there, fully alert, but I have no sense of time. This happened many times. One day I'm just sitting in my farm and I thought I sat there for about 25–30 minutes, but I have sat there for 13 days. By then a crowd has gathered, India being what it is, there are huge garlands all around me. Somebody's asking how to run his business, somebody wants to know when his daughters will get married. All the nonsense I hated just happening around me. And I actually thought it's only 25–30 minutes, but these people saying 13 days, he's sitting, he's in samadhi, he's this, that. I had not even heard these words. I grew up on, European philosophy, Camus, Kafka, Dostoevsky. You read that stuff in America? And being 60s, Beatles and this and that, I grew up like that. Me and spirituality are another world. There's no chance of me going there. So I had none of these vocabulary, samadhi, this, that stuff in me. People are saying, oh, he's in this kind of samadhi, he's in that kind of samadhi. You touch him, this will happen, and people are trying to grab me. So the only thing that I could do was leave the place and travel out, just to escape this, because I couldn't figure what's happening around me. Why I'm telling you this story is, this is possible for every human being. It's my wish and my blessing. This must happen to you. Whether you climb Mount Everest or not, whether you become the richest man on this planet or not, your experience of life on this planet should be pleasant. You must live blissfully and go. That must happen to every human being. Everybody deserves it and everybody is capable of it.